Big Ten Network visits Iowa City. It's an annual date, and the network typically takes a bus across Big Ten country. No mention of the bus this year. I haven't watched the other stops for the network, but my guess is with the 4 additional West Coast teams, the bus tour is no more, but they are stopping at all the campuses for a report and an observation from a practice from that specific university. Iowa was Friday. We'll talk about it in just a second. Before we get to my takeaways from what we heard from Big Ten Network over the weekend, I want to take a moment to remind you, if you're a Hawkeye fan, folks, and you have been watching this channel, or maybe you're brand new, please do me a favor. First of all, like the video. That's a simple thing. If you could do that on every single video that comes out, we'd have thousands of likes and we'd have no problem. Second thing, if you could please take a moment to subscribe. Whether you're just a football fan, maybe you love men's basketball, but you kind of dabble in football, or maybe you love women's hoops, we've got you covered. Please subscribe. Right now, we're just short of 9,000 subscribers and would love to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of football season. I think we could do it sooner. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. About half of our viewers who are watching regularly are not subscribed. Please hit that thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, and might as well turn notifications on so you know when a video or a live stream schedule is dropped. So the news, or I should say the recent buzz, what we learned from the Big Ten Network over the weekend. They stopped in Iowa City here on last Friday, I believe it was. And typically you got to read between the lines of what the guys at BTN say. No Dave Revson this time around. We did get to hear from Gerry DiNardo and Howard Griffith, who are mainstays with the network. Usually, I've said this before, this is the third time on this channel that I've reacted to one of these tour stops. Typically, I really take everything Howard Griffith says with a grain of salt. And quite frankly, he's sort of one of those guys that maybe says a lot, but there's not a lot of substance there. And I think in some regards, you could call what he says fluff. I think Gerry's more apt as a former coach to be a little bit more critical and specific with his statements after watching practice. But here are my observations. We'll start with Kirk Ferentz. The Big Ten Network did interview Kirk Ferentz on set. And Kirk Ferentz, of course, was asked about the quarterback situation. He told Big Ten Network that the quarterback position is coming along. They've had their ups and downs. Clearly, Hawkeye fans know about those ups and downs. They saw quite a few downs during the Kids' Day practice just over a week ago. Kirk continues to emphasize strong play up front. And one thing that really bugged me, and this has bugged me for the last several years, is Kirk Ferentz made a point of saying that the offensive line issues of recent seasons have been, quote, nobody's fault. I understand where he's coming from as it relates to injuries and attrition, but at the same time, your job as a head coach and as a position coach is to develop depth to where you can deal with injuries. I know that's difficult to do at a developmental program like Iowa, but it's next man in. And you can't say that attrition, that's no fault of your own. Like, there are different circumstances, reasons why guys leave, but you can't tell me for a second that you don't share some level of responsibility with some guys who decide to leave. Not saying for the NFL, but guys that leave via the transfer portal. And there have been a number of linemen that have left, not just due to injuries, but have left due to other opportunities. Drew Stevens starting to come into his own a little bit. Kind of an odd statement from Kirk Ferentz, but I will say this. Kirk has high expectations for Drew Stevens, and rightfully so. The kid's got a cannon for a leg. I think we're going to see a great year out of Drew. I know he got pulled late in the season against Nebraska, and that was talked about widely in the media. He has had a great camp, and he better, because I don't think Trip Rudy is ready. He has been really up and down, and Drew Stevens, his health is of utmost importance. And watch for Iowa to maybe get a transfer portal kicker, a walk-on, because that's what they did last year with Marshall Meter. I would not be surprised to see them do that again this year. Luke Lachey also spoke to the media, and I think you get a lot of player speak with Luke Lachey. Great kid. His dad is part of the media now after being a football player. They love to highlight his love of Legos, and he was at Big Ten Media Day. Obviously, Kirk has a lot of respect for him. I have no doubt he's going to have a great year and have an opportunity, if he stays healthy, to be a high draft pick. But you don't learn a lot in listening to him talk about the offense, talk about Tim Lester, etc. Obviously very complimentary, but a lot of players speak there. LeShawn Williams was asked about the quarterback position, and of course he's not going to tip his cap as to who he prefers, but he did make the statement, and I believe this to be true, that the offense is comfortable with either quarterback. And he basically said, hey, may the best guy win. And so that is further indication of what we've already suspected and what we've heard and what we've seen, that this quarterback position, this battle is just that. It is a battle. It's not been won by Cade McNamara. I do think Cade is going to start game one. If you want me to say that, I will say it. I believe that to be the case, but I think both guys will play against Illinois State. Jay Higgins also spoke, talked about the stressful camp they've had because of the new offense, maybe being a bit complimentary of the offense, maybe some players speak there, but he did say both quarterbacks have been finding their spots. He talked about accuracy. We did not see that accuracy during Kids Day. And based on what Tim Lester said to the media, didn't sound like the day BTN stopped was a great day for the offense either. Tim was quoted as saying, we haven't been finding as many explosive plays as we need to. We'll have to grow as the season goes. And he said, we need to be better than we were today as it relates to the pass offense. I thought Tim had more of a critical tone than we've heard up until this point. I think he feels the clock ticking as well, but he also acknowledges what I said last week, that this team is going to be a work in progress. This offense, I could see this offense starting to click, getting through September with the run game, which I think everybody has to be banking on right now. Pass offense, if it can get going in October, they can be fine, but don't expect immediate results. They're going to have to figure out this quarterback situation, as Gerry DiNardo kept highlighting during the broadcast, and that's certainly consistent with what Tim Lester had to say as well. Tim did think that Cade has looked better since that Kids Day performance, but he acknowledged that it wasn't a great day for either quarterback on the day of Big Ten Network's recording of that broadcast. And we keep hearing about motion. We keep hearing about stuff that you show the defense pre-snap, and he made a point of saying it's how you present the plays. A lot of the concepts are going to be the same, and that kind of leads me into one of the comments that Gerry DiNardo kept re-hitting over and over again, that Gerry DiNardo does not think this offense will be drastically different as it relates to scheme, but more so the pre-snap motion, like Tim Lester said, how you present what you show the defense. And I believe that to be the case. I do think that they really want to hit explosive plays. Tim said they want to run the ball, be balanced, find explosive plays. Those are 1, 2, and 3. I hardly ever heard Brian Ferentz talk about explosive plays. He just didn't seem to be too concerned with that. Now, Illinois State prep starts this coming Wednesday, so an extra couple of days with prep for it being the first game. So that kind of puts the nail to the donkey, as they say. And I don't know if Iowa is ready for that from a pass offense perspective. But again, if you can get that running game going, that's going to help them hit some big plays. And they're going to miss on some early, but hopefully the offensive line, led by a senior-laden starting unit with a couple of guys coming off the bench that are older as well, can be the catalyst for a much improved offense. Gerry DiNardo did not have any questions about the defense. He thinks the defense will be, quote, a force in conference play. He doesn't see anything separating the quarterbacks right now, consistent with everything else we've heard, besides the fact that we continue to see clips of Cade McNamara taking most of the snaps against the ones, Sullivan taking most of the snaps against the twos. Frankly, if there's one positive to be had with that, because I think some critics, including myself and Coach John Patterson, have made the statement that, hey, they ought to be running equal snaps against equal competition. The only thing different about Iowa is you'd have to think that the twos on defense are much better, much more advanced than the twos on offense. So even though you're not going up against the best unit, Brennan Sullivan is going with a more challenging group of guys around him on offense up against a really good defense, a pretty darn good defense. That's what I would say. So I still think this battle is very close, regardless of what the number of snaps versus what unit shows. Gerry DiNardo made this statement. I thought this was key. Iowa is going to be special on special teams. That's a positive. That means, based on what he said, the punt game doesn't seem to have missed a beat. And Gerry DiNardo thinks the offensive line is better this year, will be better this year than they have been the last 2 years. I would assume that Gerry DiNardo means the last 3 years, because they were not good in 21, certainly were not good in 22 or 23. Sometimes people don't remember that it hasn't been since 2020 since Iowa had an effective run game. And quarterback play wasn't good in 2020, but they did run the ball effectively. Phil Parker talked about the secondary maybe being the weakness right now. I think he feels pretty good about all three levels. So he's going to defer back to his position group as needing the most improvement. Talked about the offense and how it's all about eye discipline when you're going up against that offense. And I think based on the language, it seems like Iowa's defense maybe struggled a bit during the spring against this new offense and the pre-snap motion and eye discipline, all that stuff. But they've performed much better. I'm kind of reading between the lines on that one. And Phil also talked about the changes across the league, which does make prep more challenging, but it will help having a different looking offense, a somewhat more sophisticated offense to go up against the rest of fall camp. And certainly as we head into the weekly preparation periods. I did think it was worth noting the Big Ten Network host, whose name escapes me, she made the comment after they aired the conversation with Tim Lester that we are going to talk to Tim Lester. And then she corrected herself. She said, we talked to Tim Lester. So Gerry DiNardo's comments were made after seeing practice, but not after talking to Tim Lester, if that makes sense. So maybe he would have had a different tune had he listened to some of what Tim Lester had to say. But Gerry was pretty emphatic that he believes this offense will be schematically very similar to what we've seen, with just more pre-snap stuff to keep the defense on its heels, if that makes sense. So anyways, those are my takeaways. Not anything real groundbreaking. I did think it was interesting. Phil Parker said he's not coaching from the box. So he's out of the sling, at least right now. For that interview, who's out of the sling. He said he's not going to the box. He's going to be on the sidelines. I've had a couple of shoulder surgeries in recent years. That dude is a tough dude to be out there at practice or 2 days after his surgery at Kids Day to even be out there and moving around. That's pretty crazy. So kudos to a tough dude in Phil Parker. I will be back with you tomorrow. We'll be talking about some week 3 camp buzz. And of course, I'll be joined by Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, over on his channel, Iowa Football at the Voice of College Football on YouTube, live 4:30 p.m. Central Time. Bring your questions, bring your comments, and we'll talk to you then.